suspect in the Maine mass shooting, Robert Card, has been found dead. We're going to have a lot more on this later in the show. But before we get back to it, let me give you a few of the details. They're a little sketchy at this time. All 18 victims have now been identified by authorities. The shelter-in-place order, as everyone knows, has been lifted. Among them was a married couple in their 70s, a father and his 14-year-old son, 4 adults associated with the Maine Educational Center for the Deaf. A gun, note, cell phone belonging to the suspect found earlier today by the police. Divers, sonar equipment searched the river near where the suspect's car was found abandoned Wednesday night, near where apparently he had a boat. And a press conference now will be held, I guess, sometime early tomorrow morning and going forward. Anyway, police, to their credit, working through the many, many hundreds of tips from people around them. But let me repeat, the suspect in this Maine shooting has now been confirmed as dead.
In our country today, the leading cause of death of American children is gun violence. Gun violence has terrorized and traumatized so many of our communities in this country. And let us be clear, it does not have to be this way, as our friends in Australia have demonstrated.
You guys can see the main shooter, the Lewiston shooter, is no longer with us anymore. And also, to go on top of that, you call it a nice little clip there of Vice President Kamala Harris basically saying that we need to do like Australia and practically turn in our firearms, which of course is the ultimate desire of what the Democratic Party wants to do. But we'll be talking more about that throughout this entire video. There's also a few other things that we are going to be discussing. Now, guys, before we get started on this, I want you to know right now that this right here is another one of those videos that I'm doing on Sunday night to release on Monday. Things have not exactly changed, everything that's going on outside the place. And of course, it's very hard to actually record content on Monday. So once again, it's the same thing that's happening. There'll probably be some updates at the very end. And of course, there'll be a second video to go out with this from here tomorrow, which will be a little bit more pop culture-ish, because we got to talk about our favorite company, Disney, and the all the wokeness that's set to come as far as race swapping and everything. And of course, remakes are on the way, but we'll be talking about that in video number 2. Now, I want to talk about this issue because a lot of things came out over the weekend as far as intentions are concerned. A lot of people, of course, were panicking about it. People were, of course, thinking about it. The Lewiston shooter, this guy, Robert Card, they're claiming that he self-deleted, which I find kind of weird because somehow or another they found 2 holes in his head rather than 1. 2 separate shots is what they're actually what they're saying. But then again, at the same time, it could just be 2 separate wounds, meaning like in one in and out the other. So it could have been 1. So we're not really and truly sure exactly what happened there. But speaking of that there, of course, they would love to throw those lies out there. And of course, Pew Research determined that 54% of gun deaths in the nation, on average, of course, were actual self-deletions. And of course, if you pay very close attention, you actually look into mass shooting statistics, you will find out that the bulk of these, at least since 1982, and of course the total continues to rise, it occurs via handguns. Now, you guys know me, I'm very, very pro-Second Amendment, and I advise people out there not to turn in any firearms at all. But there's also this very, very strange little tweet that came out, this very odd bit of information that came out that we will get to here in a second. Now, let me show you something really quick first before we go any further. There's actually 2 things I need to show you guys. Well, I'm lying. It's actually 3. 3 separate things that need to be said, which quite frankly kind of kill the argument against the Second Amendment. Of course, we could talk about McDonald v. Chicago. We could talk about Heller, D.C. We could talk about the Bruin case. But this right here is just common sense, what I'm about to show you. Let's go ahead and roll example number 1. That bear just went around it. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you guys, there's something else too that's going to be coming up in this video. Exactly what they plan to do as far as the next year or so, because I'm pretty sure you're going to be hearing the gun control rhetoric a lot. But I'm also going to explain to you guys why it is that you just need to simply keep fighting at the local court level and the very lower levels, because obviously fighting for your rights is very important. I know my language sometimes kind of turns people off. They probably think that I'm not going to be pro-gun, which of course I obviously very, very much am. But I try to give you guys the realism and then try to come back and tell you guys over the course of the second half of it what we can do, how we can actually do it, and to keep actually fighting. Obviously, the fight for our rights is the most important thing that you can actually do, because we need to pass that on to the next generation. So obviously you see a bear just go right through a home. Of course, these are here people who probably live in a state like, say, Washington, where it's pretty much required for you to carry bear spray, which I think that bear spray is good, but of course I think you need maybe a higher powered rifle. I saw a video a while back of Lauren Southern taking and then she'll be coming up this week as well, because we got to talk about Gen Z and all this pandering that's going on and the realistic approach, the best approach to handle that topic. But still at the same time, she released a video a long time ago of her with basically a short barrel shotgun, very handheld one that you kind of hold in your right hand, just fire. She wanted to have in case she got attacked by bears. But the thing is, this right here, that weapon's not going to be that effective against a bear, especially with very, very thick skin, unless maybe you're firing slugs and the bear's got to get right up on you. But still at the same time, though, obviously home protection. Then you get to the obvious one.
Another day of clashes in the streets of Venezuela after opposition leader Juan Guaido called for an uprising against the socialist Maduro regime. You've probably noticed that the protesters there are unarmed and can't really fight back against the government. That's because Venezuela banned private gun ownership in 2012. While covering the chaos yesterday, the mainstream media accidentally slipped up and defended America's Second Amendment. Watch.
You have to understand, in Venezuela, gun ownership is not something that is open to everybody. So if the military have the guns, they have the power. And as long as Nicolas Maduro controls the military, he controls the country.
Jesse, so quite a slip up.
In Venezuela. And MSNBC, they slipped up and basically gave an argument for the Second Amendment. Do I have to tell you guys how it was that Adolf Hitler, he required his civilians to turn in their firearms, basically create a national registry, then proceeded to slaughter an entire race of people? Do I need to tell you about how it was that the Soviet Union tried to do the exact same thing? Do I need to tell you how it is that Fidel Castro, right after assuming power, after getting power in Cuba, one of the first things he chose to do was try to get people to turn in their firearms? You see, the United States has always had this thing where their leaders never required you to actually do that from about, I would say, probably from the inception of when the country was actually created, all the way till about, I'd say, probably the 1970s and 1980s. And of course, this entire thing about shootings is all cultural. But then again, I've always told people the best thing you can do to ward off against school shootings and stuff is actually have a good guy there with a gun, actually, harden the place up. Which the situation in Maine, of course, kind of says that maybe there was nobody in there that could actually react fast enough. Obviously, thoughts and prayers need to go to the family, but still, it's a learning experience, and it's a very, very, very bad learning experience. But there's something else too that needs to be said. There was actually a shooting that occurred in Ybor City, which is a small little party community in Tampa, Florida. I've been there a couple of times. I advise you guys to take a trip at some point in time if you ever want to actually go out and have some fun in Tampa. It's basically the nightlife spot in Tampa, Florida itself. So if you're ever there, make sure you guys head over to Ybor from time to time. But there was a shooting that occurred. 2 people got killed. A lot of people got injured. Very, very sad situation. Cops were also on scene. However, in most cases where there's actually a good guy with a gun, you get an outcome like this.
Tonight, an attack that could have been deadly and disastrous prevented by a security guard. We're getting a first look at the terrifying moments a gunman stormed through a luxury condominium complex and started shooting. Our Alyssa Bethencourt walks us through what happened that day.
Video obtained by Channel 13 shows 32-year-old Andrew Warrender walking through Turnberry Towers with an AR-15 style rifle in his hand. As he started to shoot, his gun jammed, and that's when a worker was able to take him down in the parking lot.
It's just after 3 p.m. on June 23rd. Andrew Warrender, seen here wearing a blue t-shirt and jeans, enters Turnberry Towers. According to police, he had an uncle living at the complex, giving him easy access inside. After grabbing an AR-15 style rifle from inside his uncle's condo, Warrender made his way through the building, walking downstairs, through hallways, and even waiting for an elevator. Moments later, he opens fire in the lobby. As he walks toward the building's entrance, Warrender points his rifle at employees hiding behind the front desk. The video shows he was only able to fire off one shot before the rifle jammed. As Warrender worked to fix the malfunction, a Turnberry employee stepped into action and fired back, striking Warrender several times in his legs and stomach. The employee then approaches Warrender and holds him at gunpoint until police arrive.
Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up.
A grand jury indicted Warrender several months after he was released from the hospital.
Now, Warrender is set to stand trial in February. Meantime, he's been released from jail.
Headers over that, but the guy who basically shot up the front desk of this apartment complex was actually there to get the weapon from his uncle, who was not home. So technically the guy stole it. You see, if somebody wants to commit a crime, they're going to do it. If somebody wants to kill a bunch of people, they're going to do it. You've had knife attacks, you've had stabbings. Oh, by the way, in Australia, the death total since they actually turned in their firearms as far as murders is concerned hasn't really changed a whole lot. It's gone down slightly, a small amount, but the overall death total itself has not really changed. I'll go back to that bear. I mean, in the country of Australia, or the continent really, snakes have been known to pop out of the nozzle when you pump gasoline into your vehicle, and people have been known to die because they'll get bit in the hand or something, and then they can't really treat it right away because snakes, quite frankly, in those areas are pretty freaking deadly. Now, I can already hear somebody saying that, you know, guns are not as effective as you think against snakes, but let's go ahead and be honest. If you've ever been out in the woods before and you've ever had a 22, which 22 pistol is really the best weapon you can have to take on snakes because the round is just small enough, which is also something else too we're going to be talking about, because if you've ever seen a 223 or 5.56, it's just slightly bigger than a 22 LR. People keep on talking about it just rips a person's body to shreds, the AR-15. It just, no, actually the person firing the weapon is the one that's actually doing that, and the round itself is only about that big, where a 30-06 is like that, which is what we carried in the M1 Garand rifles. And I know I say Garand, of course, it's supposed to be pronounced Garand or Garand, I don't freaking know. But still at the same time, though, obviously 30-06, 308 is a much, much deadlier round. So why put all the focus on AR-15s? Well, I came across this text message, this tweet. And this tweet, I think, was very important. It's a tweet, of course, about the situation involving ammo. So apparently they don't want us to be exporting any more ammo. I have a little theory on this. I have a little theory on exactly what's going on here. My theory is that because we have sent so much ammunition to Ukraine, we need to refill. Well, typically the federal government does not go after private gun ownership as far as ammo. So what do? You don't allow things to export. Next thing you know, you try to go ahead and gather as much civilian ammo as you can. The first place you would go to is the Federal Ammunition Factory, which of course you probably may know makes the American Eagle ammo, which of course is also what's given to U.S. troops. I didn't find that out until after I got out of the Marine Corps, that that's actually what we're firing was federal ammo. That's just a theory of mine. You guys can take whatever it is how you want it. You guys can think whatever. It's fine with me. If you want to continue to look, don't worry, I'll leave the article in the description box. I'll leave all the information there like always. But it makes me think that ammunition is probably the one thing that they're actually going to be going after, and this where it also includes gun accessories. You see, the thing that these politicians have done is that they've actually chose to utilize the ATF to go after gun owners for small things like solvent traps and braces, FRTs, things that are constitutionally protected. And of course, you see these things online. They pop up on YouTube all the time. Ammo Land TV does a great job of showing these things. There's also Guns and Gadgets. There's also Mr. Guns and Gear. A lot of people expose this stuff all the time. This is not primarily a Second Amendment channel. Those guys are doing a much better job than I could ever do. I'm mostly just a general issues type channel, which of course will be spreading the content out a little bit more across more platforms here soon. But the thing that you have to understand is that they're not really in a position to actually enact anything at all. You see, right now in Israel, you've got this situation where you've got this fight between Israel and Gaza in the Gaza Strip, Hamas. I'm pretty sure that if somebody was armed at that little concert, that little get-together, I'm pretty sure that those people could have been able to defend themselves against the terrorists who actually crossed over into Israel. Then, of course, you've got Ukraine, where a lot of the Ukrainian civilians have been fighting back against the Russians with good old-fashioned gun ownership. By the way, these places don't have a Second Amendment. Gun control was the thing there. Gun ownership is illegal in those areas, kind of like what happens in Venezuela, where gun ownership was practically banned. And, of course, the federal government was actually able to go in and steamroll people. It makes me think that maybe those who want gun control in the United States, as far as voters are concerned, they want the government to do the exact same thing, or they're extremely naive in believing that it will not happen. It's weird, too, because these people's minds, it's almost as if to say, it's funny, too. These people who want gun control, voters, they're screaming, "You are a Nazi, you are a Nazi," yet here they are advocating for what the Nazis did. Seeing how it is that the two senators in the state of Maine, a state, by the way, that is actually pro-gun, even though it votes Democrat, Susan Collins, Republican, not a very strong Republican, not a very conservative Republican. She has said no to any type of legislation on this. Senator Angus King, who is an independent but caucuses with Democrats, has also said no to this. Republicans just elected a brand new Speaker of the House. I wanted to cover that, but we'll be talking about Speaker Mike Johnson here in the next couple of days because two very interesting people, actually it's really like 5 or 6, had a take that I kind of find to be a little bit ridiculous, and it's also the same take where I'll give you my honest thoughts on systemic racism because I've never actually done that before. I'm pretty sure you guys kind of have an idea where I'm going with it, but still at the same time, these people aren't using their heads. Right now, you've got a war going on in the Middle East, where you can actually see where private gun ownership could have actually saved a bunch of people. And of course, it's not like Hamas is not going to be handing out weapons to civilians to defend themselves against Israelis. That's going to obviously happen. Ukraine, the same exact thing occurred. So you got to ask yourself a question. Why in the world do they want gun confiscation? Now, I've done a couple of videos, and I'll leave in the description box here on this channel, and of course on Gear Issue 33. I'll leave them in the description box for you guys to see how it is. I think that gun confiscation, for the most part, is going to be a complete, total logistical nightmare, and they're never going to be able to pull it off. But still, at the same time, they are going to continue to strip away at the Second Amendment as much as they can to leave you bare of anything. But when I saw that particular tweet, that particular bit of information on the ammunition, it made me think to myself, what can they really and truly do to make it a nightmare? Well, they can utilize the ATF to go after gun parts. They can utilize the ATF to go after not only gun parts, but they can utilize the ATF to go after, like I said, FRTs. They can also utilize the ATF to shut down ammunition places. They could use the court system, which, by the way, the court system will always end up working out for us as long as we keep filing the cases to protect the Second Amendment. But we've also got other tales of ATF agents showing up and collecting all the FFL forms and all the information illegally. We've got all that information too. Heavy Duty Country, he for the most part covers that, and he covers that absolutely. He covers it religiously. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to create a headache here and there. The idea is to go after your money. That's what it's always been over. It's always been about cash. It's always been about money. It's always been a money grab. They take a firearm away from you. Next thing you know, you got to go to court, and you're spending thousands of dollars to get that weapon back. You're spending thousands of dollars with a lawyer, of course, to go up against the federal government. That's what the entire thing is about. That's why the 87,000 IRS agents were hired. And my immediate thinking was that they were going to use these people to try to enact this form of gun control that they're looking for. But of course, that more than likely will not occur. We have over 435 million guns in this country. And the year 2020 red-pilled the hell out of a lot of people, especially when it comes to riots. Brings me back to that too. You see, the media loves to lie to people. I just mentioned the mass shooting statistic. I just mentioned the self-deletion statistic and all the lies they throw out there, especially when it comes to ammo. Briefly in passing, much more detailed stuff next year in the longer form projects. But here's the one thing that really and truly always bothers me. It's the topic of background checks. Now, if you've ever bought a firearm, chances are you know where I'm going with this. You walk into a gun store, you ask to see a gun, you ask to see a certain type of weapon. The gun dealership will either A, ask you for your driver's license, or they may ask for your permit, or they may not ask for any of that at all, because some places the gun store owner, the salesman's actually armed, and if you try to leave with that weapon, they pretty much have a right to put you down. They used to sell guns. The thing is this right here. You go through the process, you got to fill out the paperwork, you got to fill out the paperwork perfectly. It can even be online as far as like inside the store. But you have to pass that background check through the FFL, which goes straight to NICS, goes to the ATF. You have to actually pass that. And what I mean by ATF and NICS is that it goes to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which, by the way, goes through their NICS office system. And they determine whether you can get a firearm or not. And in some cases, a lot of times, that background check takes roughly 72 hours. Another thing that they throw out there is they say you can buy a gun online. Okay, that's true. You can order a gun online, but the thing is this right here. Ordering that gun online has to then go to a retailer, or it has to go to a smaller gun shop where you still have to fill out the FFL form, and you still have to actually pass it to actually get the weapon. Now, if you want to do tougher background checks, I have no idea how you're going to pull that off. I personally think that the background check that's been set in place is kind of enough. There are other things that have came out, of course, like, for example, that the FBI had been in contact over this guy. The FBI had been looking at him. The FBI was looking into Peyton Gendron. They were looking into that guy. They've been looking into a lot of actual shooters. And then when you hear people say, well, the shooter in Colorado, the shooter in Boulder, the shooter in the guy, the one, James Holmes, the one who shot the movie theater in Aurora. When you hear all these stories, you find out that every single one of these people had something in common. They were all mentally ill. It's a culture and mental illness thing. It's not got to do with the daggone gun itself. The gun can only do but so much. It has to physically be operated before it can actually do anything. I mean, blaming guns for killing people, blaming guns when people get killed is almost like blaming misspelled words on your pencil. It doesn't really make any sense, as I've said on several occasions. It's a culture mental illness issue. Now, this gentleman who pulled off the shooting in Maine, obviously 40 years old, firearms instructor, finding out more and more, like, for example, he actually left a self-deletion. You got to say it a certain way here on this channel. You have to say it a certain way on the platform, or else YouTube will find a way to yellow $ your video and not pay you for it. The fact of the matter is that all signs, once again, point to somebody who was mentally deranged, mentally ill, had a lot of very, very negative thoughts, a lot of very, very negative feelings. And people, of course, try to put this as far as like to ideology. Ed Krasenstein did this right here recently, and my response to that is this right here. The guy who shot Steve Scalise, he was a Bernie Sanders supporter. While the El Paso shooting had went on, there was another shooting that occurred in Ohio. And while the El Paso shooter was labeled as some right-wing nut, even though his MyLife.com page said that he was a left-winger, the guy who did the shooting in Ohio was a major Elizabeth Warren fan. I don't think ideology has got as much to do with it as you think as far as left and right. I think it's generalized hate and discontent for one's community and one's people in their community. I hate to say this, but racism is actually much, much more of a trope of the left than it is the right. Don't worry, we'll have a project out there in the near future. If you've ever listened to someone like, say, Spencer, for example, Richard Spencer, the guy who said he was supporting Trump in 2016, but then he supported Joe Biden in 2020, saying that the left was going back to their roots. If you listen to the interview that he did for Dinesh D'Souza's Death of a Nation, you would find out that Richard Spencer is much, much more aligned with the left. And I mean, it's actually far left. None of his values actually represent the current conservative. Definitely not the one under former President Trump who's running again. So please do me a favor and spare us the whole ideology thing. Now, as far as the possibility of an Australian gun buyback is concerned, you've got to get 60 votes in the Senate to go along with Congress, which more than likely is not going to occur because Republicans have the House to even get such a measure going through. And to go on top of this, you would pretty much have to ban the Second Amendment outright, which more than likely is not going to occur because it takes more than 2/3 of the actual Senate itself to actually re-amend the Constitution or take away an amendment. Fact of the matter is that more than likely it's never going to occur. I think what's going to happen is that they're just going to continue to rail about it all the way through 2024, and they're going to try to use that way of trying to get the 60 seats in the United States Senate. But if you take a look at the current 2024 Senate map, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Democrats are basically going to be on the defensive the whole way. So here's my advice. Stock up on ammo. All right, you guys do that there. You guys can do whatever. That's the one thing I would stock up on. Also, something else, too, continue to fight through the courts. Anytime a case comes up, make sure you keep going through that. Also, something else, too, I want you to know something else, too, because I forgot to mention this right, too. More and more proof that it's actually a money grab. Now they want to introduce something called gun insurance, which makes absolutely no sense. It's almost like they want you to pay. It's basically a great big giant money grab. But we'll be doing a different video on that here in the near future. Why is it gun control was really just money control? So make sure you guys stick around for that there. And with that right there, guys, I'm going to go ahead and halt this video now. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Please subscribe if you're new here. Also, please leave a comment in the comment section. I would love to hear what you guys have got to say. And I'll see you guys later.